Hey, what's up y'all? I'm back with another video. Ever since Dragonriding has been released to the old world, I've been wondering, is it better or worse than flight form? Obviously, Dragonriding is significantly faster as far as flight speed is concerned, but just how fast? In this video, I'm going to test 3 different farms, one for herbs, one for ores, and a dual gathering farm, both flight form and Dragonriding, to put my question to the test. Anyways, let's just get right into it. To test herbalism, I went to Ajara. It's a pretty large zone with a decent amount of herb nodes, as well as being sparsely vegetated, allowing me to maneuver easier while Dragonriding. Running around the entire zone took me a little over 9 minutes, but I'm sure I could do it in less had I practiced. I gathered a total of 71 herbs, meaning that if the nodes were permanent and I was just running around for an hour, I could collect 439. After waiting for some time to allow the nodes to respawn, I flew around the zone in flight form. This took me just over 11 minutes, which is probably as good as expected. I gathered 83 herbs, meaning that I would be able to gather around 448 per hour. With optimizations to both, I'd go as far as to argue that both Dragonriding and flight form are about equally as efficient when it comes to gathering herbs in the old world, as the time it takes to mount makes just a slight difference, letting flight form have just that slight edge when it comes to old world farming. To test mining, I went to the Burning Steppes. This zone is quite small, but its barren landscape and abundance of ores made testing pretty easy for me. A lap around the zone took me slightly under 6 minutes, mostly because of the mount cast. I gathered 178 items in total, meaning that if I were to do laps for an hour around the zone, I could theoretically get 1,924 items per hour. That being said, node spawn times are between 5 and 10 minutes, so that number, while fun to theorize, isn't particularly realistic. Flying around in flight form, I was able to get around the zone in almost the same exact time, but I can probably attest this to a distinct lack of ores towards the back stretch of my route. I had gathered 100 items in total, significantly less than when I was Dragonriding, most likely because I hadn't waited long enough. For an hour, I would theoretically get 1,176 items, which, while significantly less, is a much more realistic number as far as farming goes. The last thing I wanted to test was dual gathering. So, you already know which farm I went with. While farming, I discovered that the Swamp of Sorrows had a unique challenge to maneuvering that I didn't expect because I'd never experienced it before, and it was that the tops of the trees have gigantic hitboxes, causing me to either bonk or land on them several times. In almost 11 minutes, I wasn't even able to get around the entire zone while Dragonriding. However, I did get around most of it. I gathered 180 items in total, equaling to 1,033 per hour. This is actually a realistic number because by the time it took me to get back to my initial starting point, the nodes would have respawned. That being said, farming in flight form was significantly smoother, as maneuvering through dense trees no longer was a challenge. It took me 9.5 minutes to get around the entire zone, which was actually a much faster pace than when I was Dragonriding. Again, I can probably attest this to the maneuverability of flight form, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just not that good at Dragonriding. I gathered 246 items in total, meaning that if I were to farm the Swamp of Sorrows for an hour, I'd get around 1,566 items, which is realistic, as by the time I got to the end of the near 10-minute lap, the nodes where I had started had respawned. Not to jump to conclusions, but I think it can safely be said that flight form is still the GOAT as far as old world gathering goes. Instances where I think Dragonriding may actually be more useful is for farms that require longer distances for more sparse ores such as Fel Iron or Saronite, but as far as I'm concerned, the difference is more than likely negligible. Until they add the ability to collect while still mounted like they have in the Dragon Isles, I don't think that Dragonriding will replace flight form. Also, I'd like to point out that your shoes are untied. Ha! Made you look. Anyways guys, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something from this video, as it was fun to do the research. Anyways, as always, peace.